Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. If you love mountain biking, you are in the right place. Picture your last group ride. You're back at the parking lot. The stoke is high. You're talking about bikes, nutrition, tech, progression, jumps, drops. You love bikes. We love bikes. Let's drop in. Sage, how are you today?
Danny, I am doing fantastic. What a week. Can't wait to get into it. Got some big news. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. I am ready for your big news. What you got?
Dude, we opened up a new Strava group and we got 66 members within like a couple days, man. But here's the best part. I don't recognize at least half of the names on the list, which is amazing.
Wow. Yes. That's awesome. New listeners or listeners that we've had that are interested in following us on Strava. So how does that work if someone is on Strava and they want to join the Ride and Laugh group?
Yeah, it's just a club. I'll leave a link in the description below. I got to tell you, Danny, I was looking at the numbers because the way the club works is you can see if they have their profiles not private, their rides accumulate in the activities window. And I got to tell you, there are some strong riders in this group. I mean, unbelievable. The elevation in the miles, it's just, I'm blown away. I am blown away.
All right. Yeah. I can't wait to see what our listeners are up to. That's fantastic. That's really cool. And by joining the group, tell them what they win. Tell them about the yacht and the cars and all the opportunities.
No expense paid trip.
To snowy Pennsylvania in the middle of winter. Yes. Without skis. So it's going to be your bike. Yes.
Well, I tell you what, Danny, I thought this might be a good place for you and I to post it. Like for me, like I plan on going to Phoenixville Bike Park again when it gets warm and they open it back up. This might be a good place to just make a post like, hey, I'll be there this Saturday. There's plenty of space for everyone to kind of congregate, do a couple laps, talk, do a couple more laps. It's the perfect spot. So, stuff like that. I think that might be a good place to put that kind of stuff up.
That's a great spot to do that for sure. And for our listeners that are not in the Philadelphia area or even in the Arizona area while I'm here, the benefit of being part of the Strava group is that you can see all the other people that are in it are fans of the podcast. So you can make all the arse jokes that you want, and you can make all the jokes about being unlimited, and we can encourage each other. And so it's really kind of a space for, our type of people. And if you're listening to this podcast, obviously you love mountain biking, but you also love the vibe of mountain biking. You also love helping people, and you're also open to unsolicited advice and all of that sort of thing. So you could be anywhere in the world and join into this group just to be part of the group. Just join the vibe of positive mountain biking and of progression. And, and you can just post something. You can write a question, you can write a topic, and you can talk about all the things that we're talking about, learning how to jump, learning how to be centered, right? Everyone's on their own journey. But I feel like a lot of our listeners are also on our journey. Based on the comments, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's worked for me, or I'm going to try that, or I aspire to that. So all really, really cool stuff. I love it.
Yeah, I was definitely inspired by some of the rides that I was seeing. I was like, holy crap, do I need to get my fitness back in check for sure.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to look at it. And I want to see where everyone's riding. I want to see around the world where everyone's riding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. And maybe when we start hitting Ride and Laugh road trips, which totally want to do, you and I hitting the road, and we've already had listeners reach out. We kind of did our bucket list. We never really did our bucket list episode.
No, we
did
didn't. No, we didn't.
We talked about it. If you've been listening from the beginning, we talked about doing bucket list for like 5 episodes in a row. Never got to it, and then it just faded away. But we got a lot of places that we really want to get to and really want to ride. And we've also had a lot of listeners reach out and be like, hey, if you are here, let me know. If you're here, let me know. The tech here is awesome. The tech here is cool. The jump trails here are really cool. So let's see where everyone's riding, and it's cool. Yeah. More riding, more stoke, more progression, more fun.
I love it, Danny. Well, I was going to ask you, since we were talking about good vibes, I just wanted to know if we got any good comments from our last video, man.
Oh, always. So our last video that we will be discussing is going to be hips be lying, mountain bike goals and body position tips for 2025 and beyond. That was our New Year's episode. And one of the things that I mentioned that I was working on, and a little bit of a breakthrough for me, was this moment when I realized that my mind had wandered during the hardest part of my ride.
Yeah.
And then when I got down to the easy part, I was giving my brain permission to just like kind of like let the horses run wild and just think about whatever. And then like when it got hard, then I was going to have to be focused. And I realized that I should be practicing being present on the easy trails so that I'm ready for it on the difficult trails. And that was really eye-opening. And then that goes right into life, right? We practice being present when things are going well so that when things get bumpy, we're present and we can access that state of awareness and that state of flow and making decisions in the moment, the best decisions for us instead of these fear decisions, right? Or anxiety decisions. Instead of spiraling with thought, then we're just kind of flowing with life. And so those things really are synchronicitous. There's mountain bike synchronicities in there as far as flowing and ease at the easy trail so that you're ready for it when it gets hard. And our listener and friend, Brian on a Bike, commented, stay present even on the easy stuff. So he's quoting me there. One of my biggest struggles is exactly that. There have been a few times during an easy ride or after a session that I've gone out to play and quickly realized that I wasn't in the right mental space because I allowed myself to drift off too much. Even though I was quote unquote warmed up for a ride, I'm not always quote send that feature unquote ready. How much better would we all ride if we were always, as much as possible, in the present mindset and ready to tackle whatever comes up?
This is a hard one for me to comment on. Yeah. The thing is, like, first of all, if Brian is only using half his brain space when we're riding together, like, I don't know what the capabilities are if he's riding full brain. Like, scary.
If that's distracted Brian, then present Brian is like unbelievably unlimited. Yeah, which he is, by the way. But yeah, he's an incredible rider. But I think what, his comment resonated with me. Obviously, I feel the same way. And I think that that's a big thing in mountain biking. And we talk about stacking wins so that you start and that starts building confidence and then you're more and more in the flow state. But what if we could just enter that flow state? And you can. I've joked before that if it was up to you when we get to Mount Penn, we would go right to the hardest tech stuff and just start riding. And I had to tell you, like, yo, dude, I need to start on some easier things. Like I need to warm up. Yeah. But sometimes we're so lost in we've all had those rides where we're so lost in our mind, we're so lost in our thoughts, or even if we're just chatting up the other riders, we're not actually getting into flow state. We're thinking, and then all of a sudden something's here. Oh, I don't feel like I'm ready for this yet.
I think you're right. I think most people can relate to that. I have the opposite problem. I do best when I don't think about my ride, when I don't have anything in my brain. In fact, sometimes I'll bring music if I'm riding by myself just to get my brain not to think about the ride. When I start thinking about the feature, when I start thinking about the things that I'm supposed to do, I end up riding worse. It's when I'm completely clear and empty and I just let myself, be in the moment, be present. And I'm just taking it in. I'm not trying to think about anything on the trail. I'm not trying to think about what's coming up. I'm literally hitting everything as it comes and I'm responding to the terrain, the environment, the bike, all of it. It's just happening at that moment. And when I start thinking about things and trying to anticipate, I do terribly.
Well, being present is not anticipating. I mean, you're talking about is the flow state. What you're talking about is being present. It's just, you're just ready. You're already confident and ready when you get to a feature that you have the ability. You already have that. It's really an admirable, it's enviable. It's admirable and enviable.
You know what though? Let's get real. Let's get real. Cause I just realized that's not how I always ride. And when that changes is when it's a big time high risk feature. And I guess a good example with that would be that Hans Ray gap, the step down gap thing that we did for the first time. I had to think about that. I had to think about the whole thing. I had to give myself cues, mental cues about things that I had to think about and do. So while I did clear my brain from all other thoughts, I did have a lot of things going in my brain. Like, okay, remember to keep your eye on this tree. Like before we started that gap jump, I picked a tree out in the distance because I didn't want to look at the takeoff rock. I wanted to look at where I wanted to land, but I didn't want to look down. So I picked a tree off in the distance. So I had that tree in my brain. You know, Logan and Evan were kind enough to give us the speed, and the speed was, you know, you let go of the brakes after this one turn. So it's okay. That's the other thing that I had in my brain. And then the other thing was like, it's loose, but let the bike carry through. Cause that whole turn is all loose, like chestnuts and like small rocks. And it was like, I remember going through that and was like, okay, my bike will hook up. So I had to like put these into step order, which is not how I like to ride. That is not where I achieve my flow state. But for this high risk item, I had to do that. And that's occurred to me. Hans Ray is the only one that can pop into my head right off the top of my head. But so maybe I lied a little bit. Maybe I do kind of do this mantra stuff too. I don't know.
Well, but you were doing, I feel like we're talking almost about two different things. If you were focusing on Hans Ray before we got to Hans Ray,
I was.
You know what I mean? If you were thinking about, oh, I got this, like this is coming up, this is coming up, this is coming up, then you're not focused on whatever else you're doing. Yeah. The first time we did Hans Ray, we had a whole bunch of wins. We had done a whole bunch of, you know, it wasn't definite that we were doing it. Like it was kind of on the plate, but it wasn't definite. And then we ran into Logan and Evan and it was, oh, you know, like it all kind of came together.
Yeah, that's
but we
true.
were feeling really good. And I don't think that you were focusing on Hans Ray before we got to it. And I can't tell you how many times I focused on something that is coming up while I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
That is not being present. That is the opposite of being present, right? Because a lot of times what happens is we set a goal and then we're thinking about it, or we're just nervous about something. Maybe we fell on that feature before and we know it's coming up, or we know we're going to try it. And, you know, and so we're just focusing on that. And then you're not riding that well. And then by the time you get to the feature, you're just like, oh, there's no way I'm doing this. Like I hadn't been riding well. And what I find recently works for me is that I'm going to decide in the moment when I get there. I am not giving it energy until I get there.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. So Alan Perry said, we're talking about riding non-dominant foot forward. And you asked if that was something I was going to be working on in 2025. I said completely that it will not be. But Alan had a great idea. He said, try sessions at a pump track riding with your non-dominant foot forward. I think it can build comfort and confidence. And I think that's a perfect place to start doing a couple of laps with the other foot forward and getting comfortable with that.
Yes, I remember doing that. We used to go to a place that had a paved pump track. And I do remember taking the BMX. This is before I had the Infinity dirt jumper. And I remember taking the BMX and focusing on non-dominant foot forward. I have no footage of this. And I can tell you what that footage looked like. It looked like horrendous. It probably looked like I was having like a seizure on the bike. Like it looked horrendous. I'm sure of it. But I also remember like starting to get used to having that foot forward. So as uncomfortable as it felt, the more that you do it, it does start to become natural.
I think it's a really good suggestion too. And it's easy for us to say, you know what, I'm just going to ride with my dominant foot forward. But there are situations where you get stuck with the non-dominant foot forward, or the downhill is so long that you're going to want to switch. You're going to want to be able to kind of like shift the weight. Depending on where you're riding. Ride and Laugh one at Gmail and YouTube comments. You know, when is it appropriate to switch to the non-dominant? What is a situation where that has happened to you? Is it something that you practice? Is it something that we should be practicing? Have you tried it at a pump track? I think it's a great idea. I think the more we can train our bodies to use our non-dominant side, I think that's only going to like create more pathways in our brain and more connection and make us overall more athletic. Right. We talked about dribbling, playing basketball, right? Dribbling with your left hand, working on that, you know, just using your left hand for more. Can we use our left foot for more? Or in your case, your right foot?
Just to relate it to exactly what you were just talking about being present on the trail. You know, if you're constantly thinking about how I can get my dominant foot forward for every single feature, that's a lot of brain space that you are occupying. Like, oh, I gotta fit in a ratchet here so I can get the dominant foot forward again. Think about how much more flowy your ride would be if you didn't have to worry about which foot was going forward. Now, you're always going to have a strong foot. Like I definitely have, like my left foot forward is definitely my dominant foot. I've gotten to a point where I can do smaller features with my right foot forward, and it's great. It's one less thing that I have to worry about, that I have to think about. I can quickly adjust. And when you can get to that spot, that's less thinking that your brain has to do. You're going to flow a lot better. I love what Alan's saying. I think it's definitely worth training that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and we are unlimited, so anything is possible. So why not be able to ride with both feet forward? It's not like an urgent thing for me, but I think with that, if you're at a pump track for 20 or 30 minutes, anyone that's ridden a pump track knows they wear you out pretty fast.
Yeah,
do a few laps. Just if you're out riding with your kids, or if you are a kid and you're out riding, just try that other foot forward when you're hopping up a curb or hopping down a curb or doing your little kicker ramps on the street or whatever it may be. Well, let's see how that feels. And just kind of unlock that. Yeah. All right. Mark at POV Trails said, when Phoenixville Bike Park opens back up, can we get a super slow-mo of Super Booster Ryan, our listener and amazing jumper, from a side angle on that first big jump? And Mark says, I believe that a frame-by-frame discussion of that motion would do wonders for people. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan, for the great jumping. And thanks to Ride and Laugh guys for a great 2024. Looking forward to what's new in 2025. And then I added to this, what if we had Ryan on one side of the screen and then compare side to side with Sage, Dan, or another rider, and just be like, okay, do you see how he's standing
how
up?
Terrible you are.
Absorbing. This will be the laugh part of the podcast, where we'll be laughing at you, comparing you to like excellent world-class jumper Ryan. Yes. Welcome to the laugh part. The joke is you. Now you know how Dan feels every ride.
No. You are a darn good jumper. What I was going to say was we need to get Ryan on Strava, and he needs to post when he's going to be at Phoenixville Bike Park in the comments, so we can all go and watch him in his amazing abilities.
Yes. Agreed.
Full circle.
Agreed. All right. This is the part of the podcast where we thank everyone for listening. Gratitude for listening. We ask everyone to go into your podcast player and leave us a 5-star review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can actually leave an actual review. Hopefully we can read them soon, because they've been a little bit hidden, but I'm sure Apple will get it fixed. And certainly on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, watch till the end. View time matters, and share with your friends, tell your friends, post it on Instagram, share the podcast, help us grow. That is always awesome. That is always appreciated. So let's get into our rides.
Yes. Speaking of a character that we always talk about, I got a ride with Stick at Brandywine, which I had not been there in quite some time. And it was a fantastic group ride. I rode with Stick, Joe, John, JW, who haven't seen in a while. He's a OG. OG Brandywine guy. Shout out JW, and Greg Lowe. And it was a really fun group. And I cleared that trail gap, Danny. Do you know the one that I'm talking about?
I think so. I think I only saw it once. You and Stick were like, let's show Dan. Dan will do it. And Dan had just come back from a broken face. And I was like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah. Well, I had been eyeing this thing up, and true to form, I kept denying myself the trail gap until the conditions were absolutely perfect. I feel like every time we've gone to Brandywine, it's always like slightly wet, and Brandywine's one of those places that's really rocky, so it's a good place to go to if your regular trails are kind of wet. Brandywine's got enough rocks. Well, because we go there when it's slightly wet, the takeoff for this trail gap has always been like, it's not perfect, and it's not something that I would want to hit without it being perfect. So that was the day, man. It was absolutely frozen. It was so cold. It was really tacky, and I decided that this was the time, man. I didn't have anybody to follow. I just felt really good.
You didn't see anyone do it first, and you didn't follow anybody.
No, the best part, Danny, was it looked small, and that felt so good. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like after doing all these, the Hans Ray Gap we just talked about, right? We talked about the trail step down feature at Mount Penn, after doing all of these bigger ones, and I got to the Brandywine one, I didn't get there and I wasn't like, oh my God. I was like, oh, this is smaller than I remember it. And it's a really great feeling to have, to get to somewhere and be like, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I totally
remember that. I do remember seeing that. And I remember thinking it looked really big. And that is such a great feeling when you pull up to a feature that's been in your mind.
Yeah.
And you think of it as big and you've seen it before and you come back with different experience and a different level and you look at it and you're like, oh, I totally got this. And so that you looked at it and you were like, yeah, I got this. I don't need a tow. I don't need someone to do it. I know the speed. How did it feel? Was there, tell me about
it. So I went into, just to relate it to exactly what we were talking about earlier in this podcast, which was staying present in the ride. We had passed that feature at the beginning of the ride. So we're all freezing cold. No one's warmed up. We all just want to keep moving because it's the start of the ride. Right. And I looked at it and I said to Stick, I said, I think I'd like to revisit this at the end of the ride. And I told him that on purpose because he's the kind of route leader that can take a ride wherever and then get it back to a feature that you want to do. And it was really good, man. I stacked a lot of wins. I was back on the Ibis, by the way. I wasn't on the Stumpy. And so I was back on the Ibis. Took me a little while to get used to that bike. I've forgotten how much fun that bike is. It's a very small bike compared to the Stumpy I was riding. And I was just launching this thing and hucking and flicking. And it felt so good that by the end of the ride, I was like, yep, I feel in the zone. And I said, Stick, this is the time. I gave him the camera. I said, we're doing this. And I took a two run-ups and just sent it, man. It was really nice, man. It was really nice.
Yeah. That's awesome. Congratulations. That is so cool.
Thank you.
I did think it was interesting that you were back on the Ibis after so you gave the Infinity demo back.
Yeah. Infinity demo.
A regular demo again. But so thank you to Keswick Cycles and Specialized and Sean who made that demo happen. So I was very interested in hearing what it was like to get back onto the old bike, the smaller bike, and hear the comparison between the two.
Yeah, the small bike is where it's at, and there's no question that there's no question that the Stumpy is a far better bike in terms of just technology. The way that the bike industry has advanced in 7 years since I've had that Ibis it's not fair to compare the two bikes. They're not even in the same realm. The Stumpy has all modern geo. It feels really planted. It's got bigger wheels, but the Ibis, it's so tiny. It's so little. It just lends itself to playfulness. And so I think what that meant was the S3 that I was demoing is definitely too big for me. If I'm going to get a Stumpy, then it has to be the S2 with a mullet back wheel. And we have that on the e-bikes.
All 27.5. They don't make that many bikes that are all 27.5 anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame.
There's maybe each manufacturer, if they have any, they might have one, and it's going to be. I think we usually see it in like a really mega travel kind of range. Like the Pivot Shadowcat, and the Ibis HD5 is it? Six. But these are like mega enduro bikes. So. For whatever reason, the 27.5 wheel the 29er has really just kind of taken over. But a lot of manufacturers are making these mullet bikes where you have the big wheel up front for rollover and you have the small wheel in the back to add this like snappiness and to kind of shorten the bike up a little bit. And it's really popular. So really curious to see if you get a chance to ride the mullet, what you think about that and the smaller stump jumper.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And speaking of snappy bike riding, my other ride that I got was with Brian on a bike, who we just talked about earlier, who left that awesome comment, and Jeff Lenosky. I mean, holy crap. You want to talk about an eye-opening experience. I got a call from Jeff. He said, listen, I'd like to hit Skyline. Do you have some time? I said, absolutely.
You got a call from Brian.
I'm sorry, Brian. I said Jeff. I'm sorry. Brian. Yes.
And we do need to explain to anyone who is not familiar with Jeff Lenosky, we do need to explain who he is within the context of.
Yes. Jeff Lenosky is one of the OG mountain bikers. He's been making videos since the 90s. He got his start in trials, like won championships. And that's where he got his YouTube fame, because he would take those trial skills and do the things, those same moves on his mountain bike. And he must be one of the nicest guys. You and I met him in Arizona on the Hulbert Trail.
We had actually met him before.
Yeah.
And if you go to the Trail Stage video on Hulbert, it's called Outbossed, because Jeff Lenosky is called the Trail Boss.
The Trail Boss,
and Jeff's claim to fame, he's got so many. I mean, he does these wonderful charities with Cand-Aid where he's donating bikes to kids. Like, he's such a sweet guy. But he's got all the technique to ride just about anything that he wants. And it's really incredible. His channel is great. Definitely check it out. If you check out Jeff Lenosky or Trail Boss, he's always posting really, really cool things. He drives around the country and ride probably, I mean, I don't know how much around the world he's doing, but he rides awesome trails, and he rides them differently than anyone. But Jeff was just so awesome that day. It made a real impact on our ride. It made a real impact on us meeting him. And so Brian calls you up and says, and Brian is in New Jersey, so it's a little bit of a haul for him to get to Mount Penn, but it's the last day of your demo bike. And he says, listen, I'd love to session Skyline.
Are you available? And I said, absolutely, Brian. And he's like, well, listen, do you mind if I bring a friend? And I was like, well, listen, I'm taking a lot of footage of the Stumpy. Just let your friend know that I will be stopping and sessioning a lot. And he's like, oh, Jeff won't mind. And I was like, Jeff Lenosky? He's like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, he's certainly welcome. And absolutely. And they say never to meet your heroes. He is the exception to that rule. Just like you said, he's one of the nicest people and so giving of himself. And you get that right from the bat. We get to the parking lot, I say, Jeff, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. I said, what do you want to do? He's like, I'd love to see some of the tech. So poor Brian, he doesn't get his Skyline ride, but oh boy, did we get some tech in. Holy moly. Yeah, this guy, next level. Mm-hmm.
I saw some of what he posted on Instagram and some of the videos that you posted on Instagram, and what Brian posted, all of the riding, incredible. But Jeff just taking lines that were not lines. I mean, I know Mount Penn really well. And I'm looking at video and I'm like, where are they? Because, they're there. That's not a line. You know what I mean? Like, he's hopping on rocks before the Sam Malone slab in a way that it just never occurred to me or to you or to anyone other than Jeff. And so when you have these trial skills like Jeff does, I mean, he's next level. He's a trials champion, and he's been doing this for so long. And he was on a hardtail, by the way. I
know.
And
crazy.
We joke about me being a lanky, and that's sometimes good, sometimes bad. Jeff's not lanky. He's very proportional, but he's humongous. Right? I know he's 6'7" or something. I mean, he's much taller than I am.
I come up to his waist. It's embarrassing how tall he is compared to me. Going back to the Ibis and the Stumpy, right? It's like, here's a guy that's working with a bike that's literally 3 times the size of me, and he's
custom
able to do
from Reeb.
That's right.
These are custom made bikes from Reeb, which is the bike
that's his
company that he rides for. Yeah. And they're awesome. They're made in America. We've talked about Reeb before.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, my Stumpy's too long. As I'm thinking that, he's taking this ginormous bike and he's putting it into places that I'm just like, mind is blown. And the thing that I took away from this ride the most was, I've been riding there for 14 years. He was finding lines that I had never even seen before. Not that I would be able to do 90% of what he did, but maybe 10% I could start to incorporate myself. But what was interesting was when he got to the location, we're not talking about riding blind because we're getting off our bikes and sessioning, but he's studying the entire terrain. And the way that his brain works is like, okay, I showed him the line. I was like, okay, this is what normal people do, Jeff. And he's like, oh, that's nice. But have you thought of this? And I was like, what is this? And he's like, this rock. And I was like, well, I don't even know. And then he does it. And I'm like, oh my God, like his brain just works on another level. And then he has the skills to back it up. And that's what's so impressive about Jeff.
It's all trials. Like, some of these moves are it's not really mountain biking. It's trials on a mountain bike.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that you or I, who could maybe, move the bike a little bit, you're better at it than me, but it's something I'm working on. And, but to see what's possible with these trial skills and the control, like the way he popped up onto the Scorpion skinny.
Oh my gosh.
Was like, that's not an entrance to that skinny. It's a sniper entrance, a big step up. Like the video doesn't do justice to how difficult that is. It just takes so much strength and technique and power, and you practice these things enough. And then Jeff has that precision. He just has that precision and that confidence, and he makes it look easy. It's unbelievable. So cool.
Yeah. So you brought up a really good point though. Like, when does mountain biking end and when does trials begin? And I think that when you watch someone like Jeff, that's obviously the extreme in the one end. Like, it's like, you're right. It doesn't feel like mountain biking sometimes, just because of how much talent and skill you need to be able to do that. The average mountain biker isn't going to be able to do that. But that's not what I took away from the ride. What I took away from the ride was, could I take 10% of what he's doing and apply it to my rides? And the answer is yes. We can work on an endo turn. We can work on a step up move. Can we jump from rock to rock doing like these bunny hop, J hop moves? No, probably not. Could we work up to that? Maybe, yes. But I'm saying for my riding, there are little things that I can take away from his riding style that I can apply to my riding today. And that's what was so interesting. So one, being able to find lines. So yes, there's the traditional trail and the line that everyone's taking. Can you find an interesting, different alternative line to that? That was eye-opening. And then two, how can we apply these techniques to our current trail systems? And that to me was what was so amazing about this ride. And I can't wait to go back to Mount Penn when the snow melts and try some of these lines that he has kind of laid out. I don't know how much I'll be able to do, but the fact that I know that it's doable, yo, man, sky's the limit.
Some of that, I love it. Absolutely. And we're unlimited. And, Jeff is here to show us that, sometimes you ride with someone who's better than you. We talked about this last week, riding with people that are better than you to inspire and to show this is possible. This is a line. This is possible. If you practice this skill, this is possible, so then it seems impossible to us. It seems like, well, I could never do that. But how many times have we overcome what seems impossible? I could never ride that trail. I could never do that jump. I'll never be good at jumping. And here we are. We're riding those trails. We're doing those jumps. We're getting good at jumping. We're making shapes. And so, if we put that into our mind as an intention, then we're going to have the opportunity to practice that. We're going to have the opportunity to see a Jeff Lenosky in person, or to ride with someone who's really good at this. And then those trial skills, whereas Jeff is doing trials on the trail, and it's really cool to see, and it's amazing in every way. Yeah. If we have 10% of that skill, and it means that we can hop our bike a little bit to get it around a switchback, hop our bike a little bit to save ourselves from taking a bad line to get onto a better line, hop the bike forward to be able to get up a ledge and then punch the bike forward. Just a little move here or there. If we can if we start to practice that and get a little bit of that into our riding, then that really opens up a lot of mountain bike opportunity. That's really, really cool and really exciting.
I agree. This kind of goes back to the conversation that we were having. I think it was the previous episode, might have been 2 episodes ago, about what background would you want? And after last week's episode, you had kind of started to pull me toward moto again, because I had first said trials. And then after hearing about Mike and Stephanie and how amazing they were, and they had a moto background, I was like, oh, maybe I want to do moto. And then I had to ride with Jeff, and I was like, no, I'm back to trials. Like, just like the body control.
Excellent examples of backgrounds. Well, I think Mike had a moto background and a trials background. I know Stephanie had like a really heavy moto background, and she was incredible on the downhills right away. And so like that, the 2 incredible examples of like the moto background being incredibly useful, and then the trials background being incredibly useful. We don't have any of them. We don't have either of them
yet.
But we have mountain biking. We have passion. And we have this unlimited nature. We have this existence that we're in where we can make things happen. I've never been real good at moving the bike around other than when it's on two wheels and rolling. I've never been real good at hopping around. It's something that I'm more interested in. When I did a South Mountain ride, that ride that we did with Mike and Stephanie and Jeff, and Sean was on that ride, the 17-year-old. He's unlocked a little bit of that hopping. He's unlocked a little bit of being able to make a difficult turn because he's able to move the bike in a certain kind of way. And it's just really cool. It gives you a lot of leeway. It gives you a lot more options.
Yeah. I'm wondering, we had talked about being present and in the moment. If you start working on some of these hot moves, maybe that just becomes part of your riding, Danny. Like, one of the reasons that I'm okay at doing the endo turn is because I just continually threw them in. Yeah, I'm sure it looked ridiculous on camera. I'm sure you behind me was like, that was stupid. Like, you didn't need an endo turn there. I know that. I know I didn't need an endo turn there. I'm doing it because when I want to use it, it'll be there and I can be precise with it. And so as I'm doing these things on the trail, it just becomes natural to me. So now when I'm going down a downhill, I'm throwing little endo turn and moves. And I don't know that you've ever worked on those things, but I'm wondering, maybe this is the next step, right?
When you do the endo turn, are you pulling the front brake so that your momentum goes into the front of the bike and then the back of the bike is now unweighted and you can swing it?
So there's two different kinds, right? There's the big endo turn where you need to do something over a 45-degree angle. When you need to do something over a 45, I use a front brake. So I'll either feather or slam the front brake, and I'll actually position my body so that we talked about dominant foot and not dominant foot. You have to be comfortable with switching your foot, the other foot that's pushing the back of the bike in the direction that you want to go. When you're riding on a trail and you want to do a small endo turn, so anywhere less than 45, I would say between like 35 and 25 degrees, I'm not using front brake. You're literally just picking the back tire up and moving it.
25 to 44. Now there's a real big gray area.
Let's go feather. We're going to feather a little bit.
Let's get the protractor out. Let's check these out.
Right. You know what, Danny? It comes down to speed. When you're at speed, you don't have the opportunity to squeeze brake. First of all, you shouldn't do that anyway. But when you're at speed, it's really just about positioning your back tire in small increments to get the best line forward. Whereas when you're doing like a big move, then you're going at a slower speed. I'm using the front brake to really get the bike to turn around. So anything over 45 degrees. And you've seen people do this. I've seen Brian do this a million times. I've seen Jeff Lenosky did it a ton of times. Jeff does like a 180. It's unbelievable. But my gosh, is it handy. It is so handy. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm curious, I'm wondering if you'll start to kind of throw, there was a point where you were starting to throw these endos / pivot. Yeah.
I throw it in. I do throw it in. I do use it. I'm much better at the one at speed, which is 45 degrees and over, apparently, or under.
40 and under.
40 and under. Oh, I'm sorry. Between 25 degrees to 44 degrees is a feather. So I don't like doing math on the trail. I think that's probably why I'm not using it as much. Yeah. I'm like, wait a second.
That's my Asianness. Yeah.
45. This is 46 degrees. I didn't hit enough front brake. It's like a. The Beautiful Mind, the movie where all the numbers, I'm the opposite of that. I'm just like, there's just like blocks falling and not a math guy. So, I do. The one at speed, I do use it and it does come in handy. It's kind of like a little micro move. And I do throw that in there. The one where I need to like pretty much grab the front brake and do a stoppie. I think that is the one that I would need to practice more. I don't really have that because anytime that we're going to use that, I've seen you use that in high consequence moves. Like, okay, if I do an endo turn here, it's going to line me up for this slab. Like we did it at the waterfall on Mount Lemon. You did it. It was a perfect example.
That
like
was a
I'm
great
going to do this line and then line it up with an endo turn. And then you did it and you were like, Danny, that worked. You should do that. And I'm like, I don't have that. I can't. I got to find some way to straight line this thing. What's the opposite of a beautiful mind? A ridiculous mind.
Yeah.
RideLife1 at Gmail, YouTube comments. Are you using the Endo turn? Are you practicing it? You know, which level are you comfortable with? How handy does it come in on your riding? I think practicing on a ride makes a lot of sense because we just don't get that much time to practice otherwise.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Well, those were the big takeaways for me on my rides. I know that you had a couple of big rides yourself with some amazing people.
Yes. I had 2 rides as well, and the first one was Christmas break last week, and a whole bunch of the guys that I met around here had the week off, and so we headed up. Sedona is 2 hours away, so it's a total doable mountain bike day trip, and we went up to Sedona, and that was Jeff and Vaughn, and I so much gratitude that they invited me and that I could go, and we met Vaughn's buddy up there who is Arturo, and he's a local. So he gave us a tour.
Yeah.
And first of all, it was a great group. It was a ton of fun. And the ride was exactly what I needed. I realized that, you know, it's like, oh, so we're not going to do this trail. We're not going to do that trail. But there was plenty of features there and they looked intimidating to me. And then when I rode them, they felt really good. They felt easy. So it was like, I needed that ride. I needed that ride to build up and feel good on it. And I did notice, looking back at the footage, you noticed, you know, based on my camera angle, how far back I'm getting. And I did notice that I was defaulting to some of that fear response. I was getting a little bit further back, even though I always felt good, even though I always felt in control. There was a couple points where I was like, I'm looking at the video and now I'm very aware of how far back I'm going or how far forward I'm going. And I did notice that. So, you know, like just going with the flow, we get what we need. That was the ride that I needed. It was really fun and it built confidence.
What do you think caused you to revert back a little bit?
I think I was intimidated. You know, there was fear in my mind. It looked scary. And then as I'm riding it, I'm like, oh, like I totally got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think and I didn't get so far back. I never lost control. I don't know that the front wheel like ever popped up or anything like that. It's just, you know, look, this is a long time of ingrained habits. And for me to expect that I can just flip a switch and completely change my riding style all the time, it takes a conscious effort to get my chin forward. And even though I've had breakthrough moments where I'm like, that feels really good, I still default to getting back. So when I'm riding new trails, there's a lot to think about already. And then I have to add in this manual override of going back a little bit too far.
I was going to ask you because I've never ridden at Sedona, but I know that terrain is vastly different. I mean, it's the same state, but the terrain is vastly different from the stuff that you're riding in South Mountain, and even South Mountain to Hawes is vastly different. Like Hawes is very kitty litter. South Mountain is kitty litter, but it's more dust. It's more a finer dust. Sedona is all red rock. I don't even know what that would feel like. I didn't know if that had played a part in terms of just like not making you feel as comfortable, or did it take more time for you to get used to that?
It's been very, very dry. It's been a very, very dry season here. It's been a long time since it's rained anywhere. So there's a lot of red dust, and there's just a lot of but the rock is really, really grippy. And so the more I rode those slabs, I haven't really done. Also, Arizona doesn't really have like those big, giant, long slabs like Sedona does. So Arizona, Phoenix, I mean, we don't really have, you know, there's rocky downhills and there's steep downhills. But as far as like staying glued to a slab for, you know, what feels like 2, 3, 4 seconds is unique to Sedona for, you know, for that area. And it's also what's so cool about it.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, if I think about it, like, you know, like when you look at South Mountain, it's a lot of gnar, it's a lot of chunk, you know, and then I mean, in Tucson, we had those big slabs, but they were actually slabs. When I look at Sedona, it's not even a slab. It's like I don't know what. I don't know how you explain it. It's the mountain.
It's the terrain. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we need to explain it too much, because if you're listening to this and you love mountain biking, I'm sure you've seen a video of Sedona, people mountain biking in Sedona. And if you haven't, check it out. There's a million of them.
You should be watching this one. Yeah. You should be watching this podcast because we're going to have footage.
That's right. You're going to see Lanky D mountain biking Sedona right now, as well as Vaughn, Jeff, and Arturo, and everyone shredded. It was great. It was a really progressive, really fun ride. We ended the ride at the Sedona Bike Park, and we're all exhausted. It's the end of the ride. Sedona Bike Park is it's a pedal up to the top, and then there's like 3 main lines, and then off to the side there's like an even higher end line. But there's the green jump line, and I was like, hey, can we check it out? And so we did the green jump line, and it was really fun, and everything felt really like built perfectly to speed, and the climb up was pretty easy, and I was like, wow, that was really fun. So the next line we did was called Tech Flow. So there's tech in it, and then there's all these booters and kickers and drops, and so we did that line, and it was so fun and perfectly, like, I was following guys, so we were sending it on that line a little bit more, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And then the next line we did was like I don't know if it's their intermediate or their expert, but again, like bigger jumps, a lot of gap jumps. To the left side you could do the gap jump, to the right side you could do a drop, and if you went in the middle you could just ride it. It's just like really progressive, really well built. And so we did one run on that, and I went a little bit too slow. It was very pre-ride. And then we did a second run, and Vaughn, who's only started riding, like, I think he said in 2020, like, 4 or 5 years ago, not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we don't really have jump trails like that around here in Phoenix. Like, so he's comfortable on just sending it. And I was following him.
Unbelievable.
And just like stick, right? Just comfortable in the air, just really centered in the air. And so he's like sending the gap jumps. Not all of them. We only rode that line twice, but like he, like the second time down, he like starts sending some of these gap jumps, and I missed the first one, but I followed him through the second one, and so I ended up hitting a couple of them, and there's a really nice step up in there. I mean, it's just a really awesome place. And then there's like an expert line that's much bigger consequence things, but everything just feels like it's built to speed. Like I could totally see going up there, and I don't know that I want to spend the whole day. If I'm in Sedona, I might have to ride some tech, but I could do like a little tech loop and then do a half a day. I could totally do like 3 or 4 hours there. It was cool. It was really cool. Yeah.
So question would be, do you think riding that first would have been more helpful, or is that something that's better to do at the end?
It would be a cool warm up, but I think you'd want to do the tech. And then for me, I don't know, it feels like doing the jumps afterwards, kind of like, cause then you can kind of just, the climbs are easy. You can just kind of like burn yourself out and go until you're done. It's hard to stop. It's really fun.
Yeah.
And there was a pump track there, and the guy was like, do you want to see the pump track? And I was like, no, we only have our mountain bikes. And they're like, no, it's a mountain bike pump track. It was the biggest pump track I've ever seen in my life. It was humongous. It was made for mountain bikes. It has a zillion different lines. You could spend an hour there. Pump tracks are exhausting, but there's jump lines there. There's transfers there. Sedona's doing it right. They know it's a mountain bike destination, and they've invested in the mountain bike infrastructure there, and it's awesome.
Well, then that does sound like it's its own ride. Like I got to tell you, if there's a pump track and there's a skills park, like that to me is its own ride. Like you have to go to Sedona for 2 days, maybe it's 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Days.
You could, you could easily do a week there and not repeat the same things. Or, maybe you want to ride, hangover trail or highline, and the first ride is the pre-ride, and the second ride you're like, okay, let's do it again, knowing what's coming up, right? There's a higher level of comfort there. So yeah, being able to like build and stack wins, and I would say, yeah, it's totally obviously it's an overnight destination, and people go there for a week, all the time.
Listen, I want to hear about your next ride, but my last question to you is, now that you rode on that terrain, are we doing the white line?
Oh boy, I don't know. I'm not committing. I am definitely not committing to doing the white line. So it is grippy. Yeah, I would need a few more rides there to really get that confidence level. And I don't know. I mean, I know that you want to look at it, and I know that you want to do it, and I know that you can do it, and I know that I can do it.
You can do it. Yes.
Yeah. It's just I would just need to really be locked in. Ride and Laugh One at Gmail, YouTube comments. What's on your bucket list? Is the white line, which is this kind of iconic, really high incredibly high consequence trail at Sedona. If you don't know the White Line, just Google White Line mountain biking and you'll see even Jeff Lenosky doing it, and Jeff being nervous about it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a scary thing. So not right now. No, I wouldn't say that if I rode by the White Line right now, I'd be doing it. No, I would need to stack a lot more wins. I would need to do a lot more Sedona riding, a lot more slabs, feel that grip a lot more, have control a lot more before I'm ready to commit to something like that. So yeah, we have to get out there for a while. I have to get out there for a while. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Well, tell me about this second ride.
So second ride was, we were going to do a climbing day at National. And as Jeff is putting this together, Jeff, who lives at South Mountain, he's inviting some of his other buddies. And it just kind of becomes like, just a stoked day of people trying National Trail. And one of the things I thought was very interesting was that when we were in Sedona, we sessioned a switchback uphill climb that was really tough. And Vaughn always mentioned that he doesn't like technical climbing. He doesn't want to go to South Mountain and climb. And when we were in Sedona, we actually said out loud, I like climbing. And we made him say it. For some reason, he repeated, I like technical climbing. Yeah, it just came out of his mouth. And we were like, whoa, And so we were joking about it. And we get to the switchback and we're all sessioning it. And Vaughn's sessioning it. And I was like, oh, look at Vaughn sessioning it. And then he got it.
Okay.
And the stoke was high. We all ended up getting the switchback climb, and the stoke was really high. And then we go to South Mountain, and some of the lines he was interested in trying, some of them not as much. He's nervous about getting that front wheel up, the front wheel lift. But on the moves where you could pedal through it, he's sessioning, and he ended up getting this climb. They call it the crack, and he ended up getting it, and the stoke was high. And I was like, yo, Vaughn's like pretty good at this. Like this is in his wheelhouse. The dude's like a really good natural rider. And it made me think of Denny Janetti.
Denny Janetti.
Like, I would need to be court mandated to do tech climbing. Like absolutely not. Yeah. And I kind of like put Vaughn in that same category from what I had heard about him and from when I had talked to him. But here he is like kind of unlocking technical climbing and being really good at it and enjoying it. And I was just like, Dennis, I think there's a chance.
Yes.
It is possible.
That's incredible.
It was really fun and it was really cool. Thomas was an absolute animal. He was on flats and he was just like flying through these features. He was picking out things like, let's try riding this, let's try riding that. And so we did that big giant slab that's kind of like off the side of the trail. We did that again. Just because Thomas was like, who else wants to ride that? And AJ's down for anything technical. He's amazing. And so we all rode that slab, and I rode it, and it looks intimidating and it felt fine. I definitely got a little too far back, but not like in the past. And it was just good. Just confidence, just stacking wins.
I feel like the last couple rides at South Mountain have all been like tech climbing sessioning. Was this occurring before you got there? Like, were these actual rides, or are you inspiring people to get into tech climb? Like, what's happening here? Like,
that's a good question. I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask the guys. I mean, Jeff and Joe were the original guys that said, "Hey, you need to climb National. Like, this is cool. If you like climbing, you need to check this out." And those guys live on South Mountain, and those guys are incredible climbers. Yeah. Right. So I think that they do this all the time. And clearly Mike and Stephanie, they also live on South Mountain. They do this all the time as well. So as far as like the group coming to South Mountain to do national trail climbing, I don't know if that's something that, because we've been talking about it and the momentum of how cool that is like kind of like seeping into the mountain bike ether around here,
Right?
Like, that's an interesting point. I don't know. The guys have to tell me, or they can comment on the YouTube. And but yeah.
Question 2: are the majority of riders that you're seeing, are they on flats or clips?
Clips. Yes. Excellent question.
Okay.
Maybe a different subject, because I know we're getting long on time here, but almost everybody here rides clips as far as the South Mountain riders. And I always look at that and I notice, and it's just so chunky. There's been a lot of people that could do either, and it's just so chunky that they get like, they feel like it just keeps them more connected to the bike, especially on those downhills. on the uphills too. It's just chunky throughout. So yes, I was surprised to see that. You see a lot of enduro shoes, like they're not race shoes. You see a lot of trail bikes and enduro bikes, and you see a lot of people clipped in. From my experience, Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail, YouTube comments. If you're an Arizona rider, or if you're someplace where it's really chunky, do you ride flats? Do you ride clips? Which do you prefer, and why? That would be an interesting conversation. And we haven't gotten into that too much of clipped in riders versus flat riders. So anyone that's newer to mountain biking, or if we have anyone listening that isn't mountain biking specific, flat pedals is just like, if you think about a bike, you just step on it with your sneaker, whereas clip pedals, actually you clip in. They're actually called clipless pedals. It's just I'm not going into the history of clipless pedals. It's just silly, but
please don't.
Yes. Okay. If you would actually open your mountain bike textbook to chapter 5 and section 3. Yep. Today's lesson will be why clipless pedals are called clipless and not clips. Settle in.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny because I actually call them clips. I never call them clipless. I say clips. Are you clipped? Are you clipped in?
Yes.
You know, I'm not saying, sense. Are you clips? Yeah. Forget that. It's
yes.
Dumb.
Yeah. Because the clips they're actually referring to is a whole different thing, but we're not getting into that.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool day. It was a really good vibe. There was, I would say, some of us were more used to climbing and more into it, but everyone was giving a go at certain things and trying certain things.
Yeah.
But it was not a very long ride. And I said, well, if anyone wants to come with me, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to finish national to this one certain section, and I'm going to do Corona de Loma downhill. Like, I'm going to finish a loop. And so, hey, it's great seeing everybody. I felt a little douchey that I was going off on my own, but no one seemed to care. They were like, look, you got the legs, go for it, and so off I go. And I'm thinking, maybe if I hustle, I can see a couple of them back at Jeff's house.
Oh,
they were going to work on AJ's wheel. They were going to try to fix it, do something with his wheel. So I'm hammering, and I get back to Jeff's street. We parked on his street, and all the trucks are still there. And I was like, oh, they must be inside, but his garage door's closed.
Yeah.
And I'm almost ready to leave. And I start seeing bikes coming at me, and it's the guys. And then I see Jeff's truck drive past me and pull into the driveway, and his wife gets out of one side, and Neil, one of the guys on the ride, gets out of the other side, and the bike's in the back. And I was like, oh, this can't be good. So it turns out Neil, going through the Bermuda Triangle, which is incredibly chunky, was going really fast, decided he has done it before. He wanted to flow through there. He didn't want to hit his brakes. And so he was going really fast, and he endoed fast, and he put his shoulder out, and he caught himself with his arm, and he dislocated his shoulder. Bad. And he was in so much pain. He said he couldn't stand up. It was just, and they were like, we're going to have to get an ambulance. We're going to have to get you off this mountain. And he's like, no, the insurance situation, I'd rather not, but here they are, they're at an impasse. And here's my mountain bike gratitude of the week. And it's WebMD. It's the internet search, because the guys then pull out their phones and start searching how to relocate a dislocated shoulder.
Yes.
And they get some instruction from the internet, and they lay Neil down on a big giant slab in the trail. And they show this technique where he's pulling his arm, and there's a certain way to put that shoulder back in the socket. They just Googled it on the side of the trail. And here they're performing this procedure on a slab, and it popped back in. And then they were able to walk the bike back down, and Jeff's wife picked him up and drove him back to the house. And Neil was walking around his shoulder was sore, but he was okay. And it was just oh my gosh, that is absolutely incredible that happened. And what a great group of guys. But mountain bikers are awesome, to Google it, to check the internet on the trail, and then perform a procedure on your friend on the trail on a rock, and be able to pop that shoulder back in and kind of rescue the day. It was just a really, really cool. It's an unbelievable story. So Neil, I hope you're feeling better, and shout out to all the guys that helped. And, and everyone was trying to get back. They had places to go, and it was no, our buddy got hurt, and everything, everything changes. Like we're all in this to now we're helping out. And now we're worried about Neil, and we're going to get him back. And it's just, just mountain bikers are awesome. And it was just a crazy, really interesting, cool story.
Godspeed on the recovery, my friend. And my gratitude is my Ibis Mojo 3, man. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to be riding that bike. I'm going to be making a decision pretty soon. But I really, really enjoyed riding that bike at Brandywine. And I know that I've made the Mojo my gratitude before, but it's my gratitude again because I've had so many great adventures on that bike and being off of it for so long. I demoed the Infinity demo for like 3 or 4 weeks. It just kept snowing and, all these things kept happening. Awesome. Yeah. But being back on that Ibis made me feel it just brought back all these memories of like why I love this bike. There's so many, and yes, it's got the old Geo and the suspension doesn't work just as good, but there's something about putting on like your favorite pair of jeans. You know what I mean? You got them worn in just to the right spot. And I love that bike, man. I love that bike. It's seen me through a lot. And so thank you, Ibis, for making such a great bike. And thank you, Mr. Mojo, for giving me my Mojo.
Do you call it Mr. Mojo?
I think I should have. That's a fantastic name, Mr. Mojo.
Yeah, Mr. Mojo. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So at what point does it graduate to Dr. Mojo? Because I feel like you put it through enough. Professor Mojo. Ooh, Professor.
Oh, yo. Yeah. Professor Mojo. Oh, I like that.
That bike's definitely taught you a few things for sure.
Well, you ain't kidding, man. Well, speaking of things that I learned on that bike or what that bike has taught me, my mountain bike tip, and this was not going to be my tip, but since we were just talking about this episode, I am going to make it my tip. And that is the nose pivot / endo turn. I mean, I've heard it being called both ways. One was we talked about hitting the brake, the front brake, not the back brake, the front brake. That's one way that you can initiate the turn. So you hit the front brake and you kind of pull up a little bit, or you lunge forward a little bit. That gets the weight off the back wheel. The next step is to get the foot, and I would recommend that you try this on your dominant foot first. Swing the way that your dominant foot is, right?
So that's why you always say you have a weak side and a strong side. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I think I just said that really weird, but whatever your dominant foot is, you want to swing that way. So your less dominant foot's going to be in the back. You want to go opposite of that foot.
You have to have your feet lined up. You have to have your non-dominant foot forward if you want to go the other direction.
You don't, but it makes a lot easier. The last piece of advice that I'll give is if you're going to try this, do a slight turn. Don't try and do this like you're going to stop straight on and then try and swing. The key is you want an actual slight turn, and you don't need to be going fast. You can do it very slow. I'm talking 1 to 2 miles an hour. Start to turn, press the front brake, and then try and move that back wheel out. It's going to make a huge difference. Don't do this where you're in a straight line, you hit it and try and move it. It's not going to be very successful for you. So put yourself on a slight turn. So Danny, that was extremely confusing. I just think I screwed up everybody. Yes. There's going to be a ton of people.
I have no idea what you're talking about. RideLaugh1 at Gmail, YouTube comments. Do you agree with the dominant foot forward? If you're a trials person, can you do either foot forward? Can you keep your dominant foot forward and do either side? Do we need to be worrying about the dominant foot? Do you agree with Sage's technique? How much front brake is involved? It's really practice on the trail while you're riding, and just start small. But even those small ones, even a couple inches here and there can make a big difference. It can make a big difference in setting yourself up in the best line, or making a switchback, or just getting comfortable. And then that's how Sage started. He started small, and now he's able to do like a pretty nice endo turn. So, and it really comes in handy for you. It's a skill that I would like to manifest for myself. It's something I definitely, I see a lot of use in, and it's really cool. So
I love it.
We're unlocking trial skills, and this is a great way. This is a great way to get started. So absolutely. If you're still listening, you are absolutely one of us. You clearly love mountain biking. We appreciate you. Gratitude, appreciation, and please like and subscribe on your podcast player, and please like and subscribe on YouTube and give us a thumbs up. Tell your friends about us. Watch until the end. Add a comment. And feel free to email anything to rideandlaugh1@gmail.com, any subjects that you want us to talk about in the future, or any feedback from these rides or anything in general. We get all sorts of really cool comments and feedbacks. And there's also the Ride and Laugh Instagram page that you can check out, and you can contact us. So we appreciate everybody. Everyone have a fantastic week, a great week of riding. Ride and laugh.
I'll see everyone.